Hello everyone and welcome to the next game recap. This was the last game of the Austrian League where I had the black pieces against the international master Schreiner, who I've played several times before. And last year in the Austrian Bundesliga I was also black against him, and he started with knight f3 as well, and there I played 1d6, and yeah, he was quite well prepared against this, so I suspected that he will be even more prepared now as he played it in the last 100 games, and that's why I decided to play something a little bit different. So I played d5, g3, knight e6, and this system is very ambitious with black against knight f3 because you want to go e5 and seize the full control of the center, and the only way for white to stop this is to go d4. But if they go d4, then they have fixed their structure, and yeah, when you go bishop f5, bishop g2, knight b4, you force them to go knight a3, and then you play this line with e6, and the whole point of the setup is that you try to make some kind of a solid system where this bishop on g2 is quite restricted and the bishop on f5 remains active. So the thing is, there is of course a problem with this line. For example, when white castles, you go knight c6 back and they go knight b1. Why do you go knight c6 back? Well, you want to take on a3, and the knight has served its purpose. The knight has basically served its purpose on b4. So this is by far the main move. You can also try for some additional options. For example, you can go h6 or knight f6, but then you always have to think about either knight h4 or bishop g5 or c3 followed by queen b3. And with this you make a direct threat. But if they go knight b1 back and not allow you to take on a3, then the best move is to just go knight b4 back and ask for repetition. And white can of course agree for this or disagree, but if he agrees, I wanted to play at least a bit for a win against a low-rated opponent. But there is also this line which goes c4, knight c2, c takes d5, which can also be problematic potentially. After knight a1, then they go e4, bishop e4, take, knight c3, and so on. And the engine will always give you equality here. There have been quite a lot of, not quite a lot of, but some 2700 master games, and yeah, white can also try to play for a win like this. But anyway, I played bishop e7, which is basically making peace with a slightly worse position, but just trying to keep the game alive. However, my opponent is familiar with this. He goes c4, knight f6, knight c3. Okay, these are logical developing moves, but for example, if white doesn't go for the c4 plan, he can end up in trouble if black is in time to go, for example, h5, h4, and weaken white's kingside. Then it could be very good for black. But creating problems in the center is very important. And then I can play h6. I can also castle. h6 is a move which is aimed against this bishop on c1 because it doesn't allow bishop g5 and trades later on. But of course, white can take, go knight e5 or queen b3 or queen a4, many different options. And when you castle, now you just get this setup where, okay, white can take on c6 or white can play bishop f4. My opponent played queen a4 here, which is also very fine because if I take on e5 de, then d5 is going to hang later on, or knight e4 is going to hang. So I played bishop to d7, but after knight d7, queen d7, white just has very comfortable position. It's not really a full Carlsbad structure. If it was a full Carlsbad structure, then the bishop on g2 would be quite passive. But here, when the knight is on c6, that's the downside of it. Then the d5 pawn is vulnerable, and you're always more vulnerable to e4s when the knight moves and you try to play c6. So my opponent goes e3, solid move, just he doesn't want to think about the d4 pawn anymore. It does block the bishop on c1. However, it's a question whether you want to have it in f4 or just in d2. Probably this is the best move. Now I played rook d8, reinforcing the defense of the pawn on d5. I don't need the rook on f8 or on e8 for that matter. Bishop d2, and now I played a6. maybe in the future I want to play some plan bishop d6, knight to e7, and then c6 to go to some kind of a Carlsbad structure, or knight a7 to get rid of the queens. Some plans like this are possible. My opponent plays a3 now, just doesn't want to worry about knight b4, and also b4, b5 can be an idea in the future. And now I played queen to f5. I didn't want to play some knight a7, which could have played, maybe it was also an interesting option to go for this, but I played queen f5. I just wanted to keep the queen more active and then continue with bishop d6, knight e7 or knight a7 and c6, and I thought the queen on f5 is going to be quite an asset, but there are also downsides of this. My opponent goes rook c1, very logical. I go bishop d6, trying to go knight e7. And the downside of the queen on f5 is that I always need to think about the tricks with knight d5, knight d5, e4. However, I don't think they're really effective here, because like now if I take, whether I take with the knight and threaten knight to 2 or take with the queen, the thing is that this bishop got got quite stuck, and it's not that active, and my bishop defends c7 quite nicely. So sorry for the bad arrows and so on, but my mouse stopped working for some reason, so I'm using the touchpad. But anyway, my opponent goes rook e1 first, because now he wants to think about both knight d5 and about e4 immediately, because if he can go e4 in a good way, take, and then activate the bishop, it could just lead to my long diagonal falling apart. That's why I played the move rook a b8, which is just a prophylactic move. I want to have b7 defended in case of e4, then I would be able to either take twice, or maybe preferably I would play d knight d5 and then allow knight c6, knight d6 if needed, but then again the pawn on d4 would be weak, so e4 is a risky choice. That's why my opponent goes queen b3, attacking d5. And here I had quite a weird decision, whether I'll go for knight e7 or for knight a5 or for bishop f8. And there's some problems with every single one of those moves. If we go knight e7, my opponent can take here, no matter which knight I take with, e4 comes, and when I go somewhere like, I don't know, queen h5, then now this pawn stays alive and the d4 pawn is not lost, and white has quite a big advantage for sure. So knight e7 is not a good option. Bishop f8, I mean, why did I put it even on d6 at first if I retreat the bishop? My opponent can then go either knight a4, knight c5, or maybe even queen c2 or queen a2, b4, many different options. And for that reason I went knight a5, trying to search for some activity, and I wanted after queen a2 to go knight c4, and after e4 to go to h5, and then I calculated quite a lot of lines like this one, where I'm staying with a piece up and my knight can in the end escape to f3, or next move I can play b5, knight c4, or a line which goes e5, takes, this is what I spent some time on, but I can go c6, restricting both these minor pieces very nicely, and just later on either go knight f3 or knight c4. And I don't think I'm worse here. The engine agrees. I haven't analyzed the game yet, but anyway, this was my plan. But my opponent, of course, goes to d1, and now after takes, the bishop is no longer attacked, so my opponent can include this, and there is knight f6. So my idea was to just after queen d1 just go back to c6 and try to go knight e7 next move. Now the queen on a4, at least it's not putting pressure on c6. My opponent can now take, for example, take, and this would be very uncomfortable for me to play, because even if I get the d4 pawn, my queen doesn't have any good squares. But yeah, my opponent completely outplayed me, and then for some reason he agreed to a draw, and there is a very thin line between courage and stupidity, and I didn't want to play on. Conclusion of the tournament was that I lost like 5 points of rating, and that was because of that draw. I declined in round 1. Didn't play all that well. I also had some problems with pairings because I was white against quite low-rated opponents, and I was black against 3 strongest players. So yeah, not ideal, but we keep going. I'm already in Italy playing the Italian league, which starts today. So yeah, we will see how the games will go here. Hoping for a comeback. Thanks for watching this recap, and bye.